Looking tonight with more than 30 GOP primary contests behind us, the Republican convention is now looking more up for grabs. So what should we expect? Joining me now, Chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. Watch. The thing that seems to be concerning Donald Trump's fans, his voters, and Ted Cruz's voters is the possibility of somebody who's not in this race right now swooping into the convention as underdog, here to save the day, and party leaders convincing delegates, forget Ted Cruz, forget Donald Trump, forget John Kerry, vote for Mitt Romney, vote for Paul Ryan. Is that a possibility?
I would say this, as every kind of new element you insert into the hypothetical becomes more and more less likely. So, I mean, whether we're going to have an open convention or not is sort of where we're at. It's possible that Ted Cruz or Donald Trump can get to the majority of bound delegates before the convention, but now inserting all of these other wrinkles, each wrinkle comes with a lesser degree of certainty. So, you know, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, what happened was people ran in the individual states for delegate. They became the voting delegates at a convention. They came unbound. They voted for who they wanted to, just like you would if you voted for the president of the Kiwanis Club or the NRA. As long as you were a member and you were a voting member, you voted. Well, somewhere along the line, people decided to, why don't we expand the participation in this process? And we'll have primaries and caucuses and conventions. And those delegates now will come, but we'll tie their hands on one vote. And we'll say, on the first vote, you have to follow what your state does. But then on the second and third vote and thereafter, you can do what you want. That's really, in a nutshell, what we have at a convention. Now, it's more complicated than that, but that's basically what it is. So the bottom line is, if no candidate has 1237 going into the convention, and they take a first vote and nobody's got the majority, then they go to the second vote, and it truly is a free-for-all at that point. At that point, any one of those guys who's on the ballot, and technically another name could be submitted. Generally, that's right. However, you have to consider that now these delegates that are going in bound to candidates, in many cases, they're going to be forming relationships with those candidates. And those candidates are going to be really smart, and they're going to talk to those delegates, and they're going to have informational. So it's not like suddenly on the second or third ballot, everyone just suddenly kind of goes wild. I think if you get to a third or a fourth or a fifth ballot, then that's when things could get interesting. But, you know, this is the way, actually, if you go back in the history of our party, but many conventions were open convention. I mean,
we've seen that. There's been, I think, at least 8 contested conventions, and in most of those, the party who emerged as the nominee was not the party who went in with the most delegates. So that's my question to you, is I know that the party, and you said, we will support the nominee, whoever that nominee is. But let's take a step before that, and let me ask you whether you believe the person who has the most delegates going into the convention, even if it's not a majority, must wind up the nominee.
Well, I would never say must, but certainly I would probably state the obvious, that the closer you get to 1237, I would think that on the first or the second ballot, if you're really close, that it's obviously more likely. But, you know, one thing that I have said many times, I'm not going to help anyone get to 1237. I mean, even if it doesn't matter. I'm not going to help you get delegates. I'm not going to hurt you and prevent you from getting delegates, nor am I going to ascribe to the theory that the minority of delegates actually chooses the nominee for the majority. You have to have a majority of delegates. That's, you know, not that it's that comparable, but I won the chairmanship, Megan, on the 7th ballot.
Wow.
Now, wasn't quite a landslide, but I was never behind. But no one came to me and said, well, third ballot, you got it, you're ahead. No, you have to hit the majority. You know, democracy's a pretty special thing, and we're going to follow it, and it's going to be incumbent upon me to be overly transparent in everything that we do.
I got to go, so quick last question and answer. Do you think we're going to be headed for a contested convention, or do you think will be resolved before we get to July?
You know, it's possible. I know it's not a great answer for you, but I'm not going to say absolutely. And I can't obviously say no way. I think it's possible. It's mathematically possible that we'll be in for an open convention.
You're going to have You're going to have a lot on your hands, Mr. Chairman, if that happens, and we'll all be there to cover it. Thank you for giving us the time tonight.
All right.